Back to another episode of Dead Nation. We have a candidate profile here. It's Matt Taylor. How are you, Matt?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Fantastic. It's good to see you here. We talk about you a little bit sometimes on this show. Wondering what you've been up to and where you've been, and now you're here. I'm really excited to finally get to know who is Matt Taylor. A new vision for America, for the people, for the future. It's a good tag. Where did you get that?
Oh, it's actually been rolling around in my brain for a long time.
That's really good. A new vision for America, for the people, and for the future. It's really good. It's a nice one. All right, so let's get into your candidate profile. But before we get into your candidate profile, uh, what made you do this crazy thing? What do you want to be a transhumanist party candidate for?
Yeah, boy, it is a little bit crazy, isn't it? Um, so I was looking on the website and seeing the different candidates for it. I joined the group and then just thought, hey, you know what? I could do this. And it's been a little bit something that I have in some way always wanted to do. And then the what I read on the Transhumanist Party site made me really like it. Really lit up something. It really spoke to me and my views in a way that no other political party or group out there has before.
Yeah. There's definitely something that's more real, more human, more it makes more logical, to the whole thing. I totally agree with that, and I'm glad you were attracted to it. So that and that you put your name forward, and that you have the ability to do that undertaking. So, well done on that account. All right, cool. Well, discuss your background and why you think it would render you effective president of the United States.
Sure. In a lot of ways, I'm a regular Joe. I come from a working class background. I am I'm a teacher. And that to me has shown me the sort of firsthand the sort of um, potential problems that young people in this nation are facing, and probably across the globe um, in the upcoming future. We say often, it's so much it's become trite that the children are our future, but what kind of future are we giving them when we're leaving them with a planet that is burning and corporations that are taking all the money and power away from regular people?
Yeah, absolutely. It does make you question reality itself when there's so much destruction going on around, and no one really seems to have the courage or will or capacity to stand up against it. Anything else in your background there that you want to go into as a precursor to your launching into um, you know uh, trying to become the president of the United States?
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity 2 years in a row now to participate in a work stoppage, and our I live in West Virginia, and our teacher strike set off a chain reaction of strikes all across the country. Teachers looking for better benefits, better pay, and for legislators out there to actually listen. And we're not really, I didn't become an educator to become rich. We're not really looking um, for large amounts of money or anything. In fact, we are looking more for improvements to the schools. Of course, work conditions are part of that because we in West Virginia have lost quite a few teachers over the past few years because of pay and because of benefits being taken away. And we see a lot of vacancies across the state. And so participating in that, I got to see firsthand sort of how government by the people really works, and to communicate with the legislators in this state and nationally to try to bring about a change in the way that things were headed in this state.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the relationship where it's supposed to be the people who are the government. You know, the government isn't supposed to be some ruling authority, and it's supposed to listen. It seems, in this modern day that can be a little bit harder to get across, but at least there's some semblance of that, still remaining. What you're a teacher and an educator, and that's what you pride yourself on. What do you teach?
Mm-hmm.
Mathematics, science, biology?
I teach English and drama to high school students.
Fantastic. And what's your favorite type of lesson, like drama, for example? You got a favorite play or favorite thing to do?
Yeah, I've got a great group right now of students working on production, and it's a blast to see them come together, and students from a really diverse set of backgrounds, from with that are so different from each other when they begin in the class, and then by the end of it, we pulled together a project together that really makes them feel like a team. So that's my favorite thing.
Fantastic. That's really cool. Drama, hey, well, there's plenty of drama on this in this party, so
I've heard.
Don't have to manufacture it. We'll just you can just live it if you want. What do you consider the most important aspects of transhumanism and the kinds of impacts it should have upon the world?
Yeah, two things really stick out to me about transhumanism and that sort of thing. The one is that we, as a people, need to try to avoid. Transhumanism is all about extending human life and giving people better years while they are here, and using science to enhance humanity. And so we're faced right now with an existential crisis globally, in that our planet is raising temperatures and freak weather incidents, all because we have corporations spewing out greenhouse gases, and we can really do something about that now. And science can solve that. And I think transhumanism is the goal is to use science to better our lives. So that's number one to me, is that we can bring the brightest minds together to try to solve this crisis. Number two, life extension on a personal basis is, to me, important, and using modern medicine and science in that way to achieve the ends of extending human life and making human life while we are here into a more healthy, more enjoyable experience, because we are healthy and can live that. That's really important to me as well. So those are the two biggest things about transhumanism that I see moving forward, that the Transhumanist Party can be the vehicle, the leader in that way, to push those ends forward.
Very interesting. So the environment is highly up there, and also humanity itself has a symbiotic a symbiotic entity with the environment. So you destroy one, you destroy the other, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so you have to protect both, and both can protect each other. And it's one hypothetically has undone the other, and you can use you can use humanity through this party, for example, and through science and technology, through our tools, to protect the environment instead of destroy the environment. And yeah, it's a very good idea. And I notice here you have, by embracing new technology in agriculture and food production, we can feed ever-increasing population. By investing in space exploration, we can open humanity up to endless expansion and limitless resources. That's very nice. Did you want to expand
Yeah.
on that?
Well, science really has a lot of answers that have been untapped, and we're so driven by commercialism that many issues which science could be pursuing are not being pursued, or are being pursued with a different end in mind. I mean, we look at space exploration as something that I've always looked at in my life as the pinnacle of this age, and yet. And it felt to me growing up that it was so pure, that it was expanding our knowledge and then using that knowledge to benefit humanity. But now, even that is becoming another, instead of being the bold frontier that we thought it would be, it's a frontier for business. And these for-profit space exploration companies are cropping up, and they want to control that as well. So I think bringing that back into the hands of the people is important, and using the corporations that are exploring space to further benefit science rather than allowing them to sort of take full reign out there in the cosmos. And we do have unlimited resources just outside of our fingertips. Any metals that we need, any materials that we need are out there. And by expanding our reach, we could potentially bring about a massive change, in that as you make resources more available to more people for lower costs, then more things can be achieved. And the same is true about agriculture. Science has the answers to end world hunger, but we have a major distribution problem on this planet, and we have people who are, we are throwing away food in this country, and yet there are people starving. So, so it's definitely something that we need to be pursuing, is enhancing our agricultural technology as well to help humanity.
Very good answer. All right, so what are the areas of the U.S. Transhumanist Party platform that you identify most strongly with?
Well, the biggest would be using medical research to extend human life. I was, let's see, in May of 2018, I was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma. You may notice I have a slight lisp because they had to remove a portion of my tongue in what's called a semiglossectomy. And this is an intense surgery where they take out a portion of your tongue. They took a section of flesh from my arm. Sometimes they take it from the leg, but they took mine from my arm, and some blood vessels as well. And they splayed my neck open and sewed in this graft essentially from my arm in to replace the portion of the tongue that they had to remove to get rid of the cancer. And we're able to sew in the blood vessels to keep that new tissue alive. And if it hadn't been for that and for the work of my radiation oncologist who used radiation to prevent the cancer from coming back, we hope anyway, then I wouldn't be here because, this is top medical research. These were truly brilliant doctors who worked on me, surgeons who worked on me, and it gave me a real different perspective on medicine and where that needs to go, and how we need to make that available to more people. Also in that time, I had to fight with the insurance company. I was lucky to have insurance, but I had to fight with the insurance company to get my procedures covered. And that's not something that I wish on anybody, that in the midst of a surgery and recovery from that, and then radiation, where my mouth was so inflamed that I could hardly speak, having to be on the phone with an insurance company explaining why I had to be 200 miles from home to get the best care that I could. So life extension has become a real part of the Transhumanist Party, that platform that speaks to me. And a big part of doing that is to change the way that medical research works in this country, to further fund public medical research, and to release those studies to the public so that they can be used by doctors worldwide, but also to change the way that that medical patents work and drug patents work, to encourage more companies to take that research and to quickly turn things over, and then to take those ideas they've come up with and quickly create generic drugs or whatever we can from them, to enhance that turnover. Our medical patent system is antiquated, and it doesn't speak to the reality of living in the 21st century. So a lot of that needs to be changed so that we can extend human life, and so that we can change the way that people get treatment like mine, so that they can continue to live, so that they can continue to live healthy lives.
Yeah, and that speaks to a lot of the USTP. A lot of the USTP is very, they're advocates of radical life extension. And, we speak a lot on this show about the FDA and how the FDA gets in the way of a lot of, health improvements, because of its over-regulation, it's underperformance, it's caution. There's a lot of problems with the FDA, including funding and other things. And there's very different ideas throughout the different candidates of how to achieve this. So you're going for a public health model, similar to someone like Ben Zion, or to an extent Rachel Haywire. You're going on the fourth debate, which will be interesting because Mr. Shatke is completely the other way. He doesn't like the government at all. He doesn't want the government to be even exist. And so you can have a fight with that man over why you think increased public funding will be more efficient as opposed to ruthless dog eat dog competition. It'll be very interesting to see that idea. And you've got a lovely picture on your candidate profile of you with an MRI machine.
Yeah,
Which
that was my last day of treatment. I was so happy to make it through. 28 sessions of grueling sessions of radiation. I didn't think. I mean, the first few days, it's nothing. You're in there for all of 8 minutes. You know, you go into the room, you get put on the table, and the mask gets put over your face, and you get moved into the machine, and you're fine. But by the end of it, the wear and tear that it had done on my body, but also the mental aspects of it, it was really. I don't think I could have handled much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that these sort of put, you know, I don't know if near death experience is the right way, but you know, definitely you're definitely, you know, realizing the finitude of life. It definitely does change your perspective, and it's good to see that you've come out and you're working in a positive forum, you know, rather than just, you know, like some people do, they become alcoholics or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, you're actually turning that energy into a positive, you know, a positive energy, and using it to forward, you know, an agenda you think is good, and you know, we have a lot of respect for you in that way, and thank you for your service to the public, the United States, and the general world at wide.
In a lot of ways, I'm more positive about life than I was before. I actually, you know, went through a period of depression not too long before my diagnosis, and this was, you know, going into my operation. I wasn't sure I was going to make it out of it, and having made it out of that, and pushing myself to recover, and with the help of really incredible medical staff, I've come out with really, yeah, as you said, a new outlook. That this life is the best life we get, and we need to embrace it. And if we can, we need to extend our time so that we can enjoy more of this. Because in the end, all we know for sure is that we have this time right now.
Yeah, extend, improve, and, you know, build upon, all those good words. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you have to invest your energies into what we have. What are, in your view, some of the major problems in contemporary American society, and how can transhumanism aid in resolving those problems? So what, in your view, are some of the major problems? There are no major problems, so we can skip over this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, wow, I do really think that this is the best time in history to be alive, because we have so much high technology, and we have so many great things going for us. In so many ways, we are better off than our ancestors. But we have right now a real issue in America with division. We have a real divide between the controlling political parties and the followers of those parties. We have a real divide between the rich and the poor, and we have a real divide between those who are educated and those who aren't, and between those who live in cities and those who live in the country. But the biggest issue, I think, is that division between the rich and the poor. We're in a situation where we're moving towards a nation in which the rich control everything. In some ways, I'm afraid we're headed towards a new feudal system where the rich essentially, control every aspect of our lives, and the corporations, and working for one makes you little more than a serf, and you have to, and our middle class is shrinking. It's hard to, we think about pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, and my grandfather was able to do that, but I don't think he would have been able to do it in today's society. There's just too much pressure from the top, and too little sort of energy moving upward in the system. So I think we need to take a close look at how these corporations, especially the corporations, but also the people who control those corporations, are working within our society, because I don't think it's right that Amazon doesn't pay any taxes when I do. And, they're making billions and I'm making a few thousand. It just really doesn't equate in my mind. And I think, and then I'm just glad I'm not one of their workers. I think that they are subject to some inhuman work conditions, and I don't think they get paid enough. So to see that happen in America is unsettling, and makes me really worried about the direction that we're headed in the future. I always thought that a good corporation would seek to improve the lives of its workers as well. But I'm seeing that more and more these corporations are in it just for the bottom line and for their shareholders, instead of worrying about being a good steward of the country.
I really, really like your analogy of using what you said about becoming a feudal system, because I also say the same thing, where there's lords and serfs. I don't know where you picked that up, but that's spot on. I think that's exactly where America is going, and has been for a while, and I like that a lot. I think that is a very good way to describe the contemporary American scenario situation. I think you've got that spot on. And how can transhumanism aid in resolving those problems?
Yeah, transhumanism is has a complete, I feel like, complete different ideology to this aggressive capitalism, and we're not talking about socialism here, but a big portion of the name of the Transhumanist Party is human, and we need to remember that that the nation exists for us, for the people. Wasn't that the first thing that we learned about the American government? As a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Well, we're the people, and it should be for us rather than for a corporation, and promoting their interests. I've seen this firsthand here in West Virginia, where these oil and gas companies have come in, just like the coal companies came in a century ago, and are getting away with paying essentially no taxes, closing up shop, filing bankruptcy so they don't have to pay their workers their retirements, and they're getting away with what I believe is criminal behavior. If I did this, I think that if I agreed to pay people something and I didn't, I think I'd be arrested for it. It's a breach of contract. It's a breach of trust. And yet these corporations, and I mean, I hate to keep harping on it, but those to me, it seems to me that these big companies who are just in it to make so much money, and they don't care about the people, they don't care about the environment they're wrecking. They're just in it to make money. Well, one of the ways that they're making money, increasing the bottom line, is to automate a lot of that work, and that's a use of technology that could be of great benefit to us. The more work that gets automated, we see, self-driving cars coming out. We see that will eventually mean that the trucks on the road will be self-driving. That means that in factories, a lot of what took a person to do is now being done by a robot. And that should be a great boon to the people, because that should free up time and energy that can be spent elsewhere. And here's where I think that transhumanism factors in, is that we as a group of people have embraced technology as a way to improve human life. And yet seeing that technology can be used to degrade human life means that we need to step in, and we need to provide new education opportunities for people so they can start doing the jobs that machines can't do. Jobs that involve a lot of thought. We haven't created the true thinking machine that can replace a human being yet. Human beings are the source of creativity, the source of new innovations and new ideas. A machine can't come up with a new idea, not yet anyway. We need to be there to help people who are replaced by technology to gain a foothold in this new world as we advance forward. And I think automation is a great thing. I think the fewer people who need to be doing menial jobs, the better. The more that we can have a machine do the job that a person, it's too dangerous for a person, or too, or in other ways is not a job that that a person wants to be doing or should be doing, the better. But if we're replacing people, we need to find ways to help those people.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. It's a two-track legal system, and Mitt Romney famously said, corporations are people, my friend, right? So, you're saying for and by the people, but technically that's true when you factor in the fact that these corps are people, right?
Yeah, psychopathic people who don't know how to work in a society. If human beings behave in the manner that these corporations behave, we call them sociopaths, psychopaths. They, if you're only thinking about yourself and getting getting ahead yourself, and not even considering the harm that you're doing to others, then you aren't living in the society that we've created. You're trying to live outside that society, and that's what these corporations are doing. So, not all corporations, of course. I'm not saying that capitalism is all in all a bad thing, but some restraints need to be placed on this, and we should be using the corporations to benefit us rather than using the government to benefit the corporations.
All right, cool. In your view, what aspects of contemporary American politics work well? What aspects of contemporary American politics are broken and or malfunctioning? So, what aspects of contemporary American politics work well? Matt Taylor.
So I think, this is a great American experiment, and it is leading the world in a way that spreads freedom and democracy around the world. America has become a model for newer democracies around the world to aspire to. And we have achieved so much. Like I said, I think we're living in the best time to be alive. And a large part of that in America is because of the political system. Because we are, at the core, a government by the people. And the representative democracy is a way to make sure that our voices can be heard. Now, they aren't always heard, but they can be. And if we have good, strong representation in government, then they will listen, and it will be truly that government by the people.
All right, cool, very cool. And what aspects of contemporary American politics are broken and or malfunctioning?
Yeah, we've sort of come into gridlock in America. We have two major controlling political parties who cannot come to agreement. And all it is just a boxing match between the two major parties. And neither one wants to compromise. Neither party wants to pursue what are common sense ideas. Instead, they only want to push their own agenda at the expense of the other party's agenda, which means that they block anything that the other party is trying to do, whether it's a good idea or not. They don't take these bills and weigh them out as, well, will this benefit America or not? They say, oh, is it my party's idea or is it the other party's idea? And this we see especially in the Senate, where good ideas are not even brought to the floor because they are not brought up by the controlling party. And I think one way to deal with that is to change the rules of the Senate. I'm not in position, and I don't think the president is in position to change that. But I hope that the Senate comes to the realization themselves that the filibuster needs to be changed. The process by which bills are brought to the floor of the Senate needs to be changed to encourage more communication between the two parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if elected President of the United States, what policy measures would you pursue?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would try to pursue the goals of the Transhumanist Party in the realm of life extension. I think, as we spoke about before, there are major changes that need to be done in the FDA and the way that medical patents are handled, and the process by which medical patents can be gotten. We need to try to speed that up and streamline that process, and we need to also change it to allow drug patents to expire faster, so that affordable drugs are more quickly brought to the people. So that would be my first goal, and part of that would also include redirecting spending from the war that we've perpetually been in for half my life, and using that money to expand on medical and scientific research, and to further fund the National Institute of Health. And then third, I think that we need to bring together the best minds in America and really around the world, but we have a lot of the best minds in the world here in America, to bring together those thinkers to really solve the climate crisis.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, climate, the health, and maybe a little bit of ending war. That's your three primary issues, correct?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think that those are the sort of threats to our lives as people.
And does your drug does your medical patent one, does that extend into broader copyright issues, the copyright cartels and so forth, or are you just worried about medical mainly, and you don't want to go into
So,
film and media and
um,
TV and all the other things?
yeah, I personally am for a freer copyright plan. I As a creative myself, as a writer, I've often pursued things like Creative Commons licensing and other forms of licensing. So while I personally think that we should adopt plans that are more open to allow more fair use, that I think is a separate issue from the drug patents,
I
which
understand.
we really want those to move. We want medical advances to move through the system faster, both from innovation all the way down to getting them in the hands of the people.
So you would be you would know of the work of Dr. Lawrence Lessing, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah. So you want a kind of Dr. Lawrence Lessing moment in the medical industry.
I'd say that you could characterize it that way. Yeah,
All right, cool. Yeah, because Creative Commons was absolutely huge for the internet. The internet would not
yes,
function half as well, without Dr. Lawrence Lessing getting in there and pursuing Creative Commons so hard. It didn't end up in all areas of the internet. I mean, China's got a huge part of the
sure,
internet locked away, but that's
yeah,
China. I mean, who knows what they're doing? So, but for the most part, he's done some great stuff, and um, it would be interesting to see him, someone like him, Dr. Lawrence Lessing moment, from what I'm hearing for you, in the working in the patents field, with the medical industry, with the labs, with the biotech industry, with the cancer industry, with a whole bunch of these people, to pursue freer, open, more open, sources of tech, and a lot of even your DNA and stuff was all patented away
yeah,
in the 90s. You remember there was a
yeah.
great gold rush. There was that great rush to patent your genes and your flesh in the 90s when it was all opened up. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I really don't think that a discovery should be in that way should be patentable. I understand why drugs and technology can be patented. When you're inventing something, it makes sense that you need to protect that and the investment that's gone into that invention. And so for a time, it makes sense that you can control a patent and have a temporary monopoly on the use of that technology or that drug. But patenting something that exists in a human being, to
Mm.
me, is a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, and it really brings up the old birth certificate theories and all that. But anyway, I won't go into that. If elected president of the United States, what changes do you hope to achieve in your first term in office?
My biggest is again in the medical field. I'd like to see a healthcare reform bill that extends a Medicare option to all Americans. As I said, I had to fight while I was sick, and to be honest, my wife did most of the fighting, but had to fight with the insurance company. And I was fortunate to have a fairly good insurance through my work. But I was, prior to that, I had almost made a decision to move, and the decision, the way that it would have worked out, would have left me without a job for a time. And I'm glad now that I didn't, because if that time that I had not had a job had overlapped with the time of my diagnosis, I could not have afforded it. I would have to have mortgaged my house. I would have to have, gone into debt just to pay for medical bills. And that to me is the fact that anyone should have to give up everything they've worked for because they've gotten sick is a terrible thing. And we have the way to solve that. And the way to solve that is to extend Medicare to be an option to cover everyone. And we can pay for that with corporate taxes, and we can pay for that with by redirecting some of the expense that we have in our perpetual war machine. So that would be my first sort of goal. And then, as we talked about, to change the medical testing and patent systems, and to work with people to reduce the threat of climate change. All things that we've talked about.
And I don't think there's a person in America, even apart from maybe Jeff Bezos, that disagrees with you on Amazon. Apart from the lobbyist who's getting a fat paycheck, but apart from that, I mean, everybody agrees that one of the richest, if not the richest, or definitely one of the richest companies in the world, probably should pay at least $1 in tax. I mean,
you would think so, right?
And some of these oil companies or banks, I mean, at the end of the day, they get a tax credit, and then then these people, they run around and they say, why is there so much turmoil in the streets? Why is Antifa out running around? Why is the alt-right running around? Because there is no middle class. Because you are the tax cows to subsidize these guys and get your jobs you're paying for your own automation. You're paying for your own jobs to be automated away, where the only thing you have left is running around on the street, hitting each other over the head with clubs. I mean, that's the only game in town, right? So I don't think anybody disagrees with you on that. I think that's a really solid point to hammer home, and that sort of debate goes right up to the Democratic debates, which we're talking about now, and some respects the Republican debate. But there is not much of a debate over there because Trump's got that wrapped up. So and I think they'll keep it that way. For a while at least. He'll buy them some time on holding off those debates. So what are your thoughts on the US Constitution and its relevance and implications in the transhuman era?
Yeah, I think that our founding fathers had it right when they created the Constitution. They were working in a much different era, but look how that document with changes has survived. But there's the ticket right there, that it has had changes. It is a living document. And while I hold certain things sacrosanct, freedom of speech is something I hold sacrosanct, especially as somebody who works peripherally in in the dramatic arts. I would hate to see these things being stamped out because of what the message that people are trying to say in film and TV and on stage. So, and as a writer, I would hate to see that my rights being pushed down because I said the wrong thing. And so, certain things in the Constitution, I think, are untouchable and should never be changed in the future of this nation. But other things need to be approached with a look toward how they're serving us today. One of those ways is that we had the Equal Rights Amendment almost got passed. And I think that it would be such a good thing for our country, but the sunset on that has passed, and yet I think that could be extended. I think that another state could be brought on board, and the Equal Rights Amendment could be passed. So that would be where I would change it. But I think that certain parts of the document need to be looked at, and we need to consider: is it serving our nation today?
Yeah, absolutely. And and I like the fact that you bring up it's a living document. I mean, what is it, like 20 amendments? I don't know, 25?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not American,
yeah.
but there's a lot, right?
I'm going to find out on Tuesday. Tuesday is Constitution Day, and every school in the country has to have a lesson about the Constitution. So I will have my memory um,
Refreshed.
revitalized about
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
refreshed.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's good. Are transhumanism and the current U.S. Constitution compatible?
Absolutely. Um, again, I'd say I hold freedom of speech sacrosanct. Freedom of speech is a major plank in the transhumanist platform. Without that, who are we? If we can't express our ideas and come to debate and to discuss a diverging points of view, then we can't move forward. And we need to try to, when America was created, it was about that. It was about moving forward and introducing entirely new concepts into the way that people should be governed. It was, so different from anything that had come before. Yes, modeled after Roman Republic and modeled after Greek democracy, but yet vastly different and vastly new. And in a way, we're up against a new changing time with the way that technology and innovation is happening, that we are embracing new ideas all the time. So I think absolutely the transhumanism and the Constitution are compatible. Again, looking at the cases where the document doesn't serve us any longer. And, I mean, gosh, the 3/5 compromise was part of the original Constitution. And that, that's not something that we want around anymore. To consider that a person might be 3/5 of a person is not an ideal of modern man. And so it's ever evolving and changing, and it might need brushed up a little bit here as we move into this bold future. But it provides a framework that is robust and has withstood the changing times.
What about this notion of yelling "fire" in a crowded theater and/or hate speech? Are these relevant topics to say that these shouldn't be a thing? or is a U stand for all speech, including hate speech and yelling fire in a crowded theater?
Yeah, I think that there's I just spoke with my students just the other day about censorship and our freedoms and those things. I am generally against censorship in I would say most of its forms. I do think that we as humans living in a society need to watch ourselves that we don't devolve into vulgarity. There's no reason that a discussion about diverging beliefs can't be had if that's what it remains. Too often it becomes just a clash, and that's something I hope that we can avoid. But I don't think it's the government's responsibility to regulate that.
All right. A transhumanist campaign for president is primarily an educational endeavor. What are the key insights about which you would like to educate the public during your campaign? How would you like to educate them?
Well, let's tackle the last part of that first. Well, how? Well, this is part of how, is appearing on media sources, both new media and traditional media. I think that's the way that we got to get the message out. I think that transhumanism has a message for all Americans, that we can move into a future that is even brighter and better than where we are now. And voicing those ideas and bringing attention to those ideas should be our number one priority. And taking I think as people hear some of the ideals of the Transhumanist Party, they may find that they agree with those, that they could embrace those, and they may change their minds about certain positions they've held in the past. And I think that's why we're here, isn't it? To push forward a changing idea. It's going to take a heck of a lot to overturn the system as it is, but to inject ideas into that system so that the system changes itself, that's definitely possible. To sort of an idea virus, if you will, inject the ideas, though they're good ideas, of the Transhumanist Party into the general public and into people in the controlling parties to alter the way that they think about these things. That's really, I would say, the goal.
You hit on a really, really, really good note here, and that is a lot of people talk about, let's say, Dmitry Orlov's collapse gap theory, right? Where you had the Soviet Union collapse in the 90s, and the collapse gap is how long until the United States falls over in a big heap. There's a lot of declinists who are talking about the United States on an absolute decline or relative decline. How long will it take, blah, 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 until the United States collapse and stuff. You've hit on a good note here because, maybe some of these ideas, if you can get enough of these ideas through, it can rally the public to actually appreciate what the United States has to offer as it is, with a little bit of rejigging of policy and a little bit of an infusion of new ideas. Because the United States, cliche as it sounds, it's the richest country to ever be produced on planet Earth. It's the most technologically advanced. It has some of the best systems, the best brains, the best energy. It's a great country, and if you can get some of these ideas in it, it might remind people of instead of pulling it all down to start from scratch for no reason, that you can utilize what resources and energy and technological prowess you have for some of these goals. I mean, maybe that energizes people to just hold the whole thing up a little bit longer. And you'll see the United States on a whole paradigm shift towards something totally unrecognizable, totally unique in the history of the human civilization. And all it takes is an energizing, and we've seen these energizing factors before in politics. Ron Paul, Bernie Sanders, some of the mainstream candidates, right back to fundamental times like Roosevelt and even JFK with his moon exploration sort of stuff, and or talk about Ronald Reagan with the war on cancer, and I mean these shook the nation into an alertness that was hard to jig it out of. And you've hit on a really, really important campaign. If you can get some of these debate points to the top, Andrew Yang's hitting on some of them with UBI. But if you can get some more of these energizing ideas, it might wake up the public and some of these overlords that you talk about in the feudal system. But it might wake these people up to stop thinking in terms of relative decline and start to think of how to reshape existing and current resources for positive outcomes. Because in a way, in some respects, America is the last place on earth where you can do this. You can't go to China, you can't really go to Europe, you're not going to go to the Middle East and go to the Saudi. You don't really want to go try Russia. Where are you going to go? So in that way, getting these ideas into the public debate it's a really, really good point.
I mean, given a lever large enough and the fulcrum placed in the right place, you can move the world. So, I mean, it's all about moving the world with ideas. Absolutely. And you're right. This is the only place that, I mean, maybe not the only place, but it is certainly ripe for ideas to be spread around.
America's a very progressive country in that respect. They're young enough to be able to adopt new ideas. They're not as conservative as people say. It's only 400 years old, but I totally understand that idea. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
And well, it all again extends from the freedom of speech. I mean, that's an idea that they had when they were writing the Constitution in 1783, I think, and yet that is one of the main things that has allowed this nation to be that nation that can change. And we're here at that fulcrum point, at that time when America can be changed, and it can either be changed towards the America we'd like to see, or it can be pushed towards collapse.
Yeah, if you really like all these old presidents and these founding fathers and stuff, which a lot of Americans do, Benjamin Franklin was a real pusher of science, and he said something like, all problems can be solved eventually through science and technology. So America, live out your founding fathers, I'm not sure, Benjamin Franklin, whoever that was, one of them. But anyway, given that a president would need to act on behalf of the interests of the entire population with regards to members of the public who are either not transhumanists or maybe implicit transhumanists, what would make you an effective candidate for appealing and representing their interests? So it's a long-winded question, but basically we got it down to this. The president has to act on behalf of 350 million people, or the aggregate population, and the aggregate population are implicit transhumanists in the fact that they go to the doctor, they take vitamins, they wake up in the morning, they do exercise, So they look after themselves. They're implicit transhumanists. They just don't realize it yet. They just call it being normal, right? And then there's a small subset of the population that are actually transhumanists and they want to go in, over, and beyond, right? So, given the fact that the president would have to look after the whole group of people, what would make you an effective candidate appealing to and representing their interests?
Yeah, and isn't that true that so many people, if they only knew, they'd be transhumanists? I feel like that's why it spoke when I was reading about the Transhumanist Party and the platform. That's why it spoke so much to me, is that it was like, hey, wait a minute, isn't this exactly, as you said, being normal? And those things were things that I've embraced in my life, and things that I was like, oh, I would definitely get behind these in my political life as well. And so I think a large amount of the population could be brought around to that way of thinking. But personally, I'd like to consider myself a pretty normal American. I grew up with a single working mother who provided for us on a not great salary, provided for 4 kids, and and worked all the way through our childhood to provide for us. And so I have sort of not meager beginnings. She always provided everything we needed. We never wanted for food or clothing or shelter. I mean, we wanted things that we didn't have, but we never needed those things. But sort of typical average American background. And in just outside of Pittsburgh, which is a sort of typical working class city, where I saw growing up the sort of environment, the sort of issues that the average American has to deal with. And then even now, I'm living on a teacher's salary. It's not a great salary, and yet I can provide for myself and my wife. She also works, and between us, we have a home, and a nice home, nothing extravagant, but sort of the little one-story ranch home that I always dreamed of having. And I live now in a small town in Appalachia, around people who are blue-collar workers primarily, who are working in the forestry industry or in the coal industry or the gas industry, or who are running their own small businesses, and seeing the day-to-day things that really affect them. I think that the forerunners in the major parties are out of touch with real America. I think that some of them maybe had grown up in sort of average America, but I think they're so far separated from it that they can't see what really affects the average American. The average American isn't thinking about China and tariffs and that sort of thing. Now, those might affect them, especially if they're a farmer right now, but the average American is thinking about where their next paycheck is coming and what they need to spend that on. And am I going to get sick and need to spend all my savings on, or is my child going to get sick? And they're worried about, they aren't worried about the stock market because they don't have that investment, the average American. They're worried about, am I going to be able to pay down the debt that I have? They're worried about, am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to have a job next week, next year? Or is that going to be taken away from me? So these sort of common issues are the thing that I don't have all the answers about them, but I certainly have the ears to listen and the experience to understand what a sort of average American is going through. And I think that is important. We think of, transhumanism as this lofty goal, working towards the singularity where our brain functions can be uploaded into a computer or something. But we are here right now in the present and have so much opportunity to improve lives here in the present. And, technology is a part of the answer, but it's, but we can't lose sight of where we are right now and what Americans are going through. And so I think that is the way that I can approach working with most Americans that some of my opponents can't.
Yeah. So you're an average Joe. Average Joe problems. That's what a lot of people want to hear. Donald Trump tapped into that experience, even though he's not an average Joe, but he sold it very well, and he did that very well. Some interesting candidate matchups would be interesting to have you on a debate. We've kind of run out of time before the debates, but voting goes on and on. Some interesting things I would like to see. You and Mr. Holsopple line up on everyday issues now. Mr. Holsopple has this initiative called 222, and it's basically 2,000 gallons of 2 liters of water. It's a shelter, food, and water metric over 2,000 or something. But anyway, it's a metric that you can sustain human life, and he has this idea that if you implement this policy, you can fix a lot of the human issues, including the massive refugee crisis and the homeless crisis that's going on in a lot of the big cities around America. And so he concentrates on the here and now. On the Constitution, you and Kimberly Forsyth would be interesting to talk to. Kimberly Forsyth wrote a very good article in Medium about how she thinks that the U.S. Constitution sort of isn't compatible with some of these ideas, and you think it is, which is very interesting. And like I said, Mr. Shacky and yourself are completely different on the free market. He's a free market go. You're worried more about public investment, public R&D. Very interesting debate right there. So keep that in mind if you want to reach out to those people and talk to those people about those issues, because it would be interesting to see those sorts of matchup. That's Mr. Holsopple, Kimberly Forsyth, and Mr. Shatke. Very, very interesting there. Well, look, is there anything else you want to say? Plug, tell people, you can say whatever you want to the other candidates or whatever. They all watch this show. They'll all see this.
I just encourage your viewers to, if they want to know more about my campaign or my platform, they can visit. Right now, I've got a Facebook page at fb.me/Taylor for America.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming on and telling us your story. And John Kurtz, actually, on your environmental thing. John Kurtz is interesting to talk about on the environment as well. They're all very interesting candidates, but I just thought I'd mention that because that's one of your main platform ideas. But yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on Detonation and doing a candidate profile.
Thank you.
Really, really cool. We'll definitely see you at the debate, if not before, but we'll definitely see you at the debate. And reach out to some of those people and have a talk to them about those issues, because that's where you guys kind of clash and well, not clash, but kind of have different ideas, and it would be fun to see what they have to say. So keep that in mind. So thank you very much, Matt Taylor.
And thank you.
No problem. Detonation, all more coming to you all this way, all this week. Debate's coming up soon. We'll see you there.